Great. So like they said, Maureen and I are here from both the Park Service and the Interagency Council to talk a little bit about strategies, approaches, and frameworks that we're using across both the Park Service and our interagency partners, and some of the just scaffolds that we have and guidance that's being produced on that front. So we'll go through, we're going to go through the guidance and a little bit of background, some interagency applications, and then leave plenty of time for questions, or at least that's our goal as we go through here. So I'll go ahead and get us started. So when we talk about visitor use management, what are we talking about that as a construct? I think one of the just really wonderful things about the moment we're in right now is that there are so many current initiatives where we're really trying to encourage access and encourage that connection that people have with their public lands and waters. This means as we have more and more people coming to these places that there is a heightening need for the agencies collaboratively to be proactive and thoughtful in our approach to managing this use in a sustainable way. So we want to be encouraging access, improving experiences, and also thinking about protecting resources. I wanted to note, and because I think it's really important to mention, that visitor use management as a construct, as a process, is not about saying no to visitors or to opportunities. And it's not just about thinking about crowding mitigation or congestion mitigation, but it's really thinking holistically about what it means to be strategic and proactive when it comes to ensuring quality visitor experiences and access to the highly valued opportunities and services that critically connect visitors to the resources in a really sustainable and meaningful way. I think if we can do this well and keep vigilant with those changing dynamics for visitor use, we're going to be able to continue to welcome visitors to great experiences and to protect the resources that are vital to both our mission and to their connection to space. So that's a little bit on just why this is such an important topic for us to be engaging in. When we think about visitor use management, it's something that strikes at the very heart of connecting people to their lands. And we want to be working collaboratively so that our results can benefit as many people as possible for those quality experiences, high satisfaction, protection of resources, to make meaningful connections. We really want to be stressing that this is about building proactive and collaborative relationships with stakeholders and communities and service providers who are partners with the agencies to provide those visitor experiences and provide the public with a quality recreation experience. So by working together, we can be creating innovative solutions through public-private partnerships and other collaborations to address these ongoing needs. And as we talked about in previous slides, and I'm sure it's coming up in other presentations, this is an incredibly dynamic space, right? So that proactive intentionality is something that's really critical for us all to be thinking about. So what tools do we have to be thinking about that? To guide kind of planning, decision-making, thoughtful intention. There is the work of the Interagency Visitor Use Management Council. The council was formed in 2011 to provide guidance on the long-term visitor use management policies and to give direction on the most pressing needs by building technical competencies and improving the interagency coordination. So you can see on the slide there are the 6 federal land and water management agencies that collaborate as a part of the council. The council's main goal was to provide, and still is to provide, consistent guidance across the agencies to elevate the professional and scientific approach and to increase in communication and to improve efficiency and efficacy as a result of our defensible decision-making. The council's vision is there on the slide. There's a number of products that have come out of the council's collaborative work. One is a position paper on visitor use management and a position paper on the definitions and guidance associated with visitor capacities. Those both feed into and are expanded upon in the visitor use management framework, which is at the center of the graphic because it's at the center of a lot of what we do. Because that process, and I love that it's a ladder because I always talk about it as a scaffold for our decision-making, really sits at the core of that. And then to support that with additional detail, there have been 2 guidebooks that have been developed more recently. One about monitoring, so indicators and thresholds and ongoing monitoring, and a second to detail on visitor capacity. So all of that information is available on the council's website. that's there at the bottom of the slide, visitorUseManagement.nps.gov. Maureen and I are going to walk through some of the kind of key components of the guidance and where these resources live. But also as we get to the end, happy to answer any questions about the council and the associated guidance. In addition to being project managers for the Park Service, Maureen and I are also technical advisors to the council. So we're here in both of those hats. So one of the first things that the councils did was to come together to work on consistently defining concepts and terms across the agencies. As this group well knows, we're really good at knowing where the boundaries are. Our visitors don't care. It's a comprehensive recreation experience for them, right? So we wanted to be able to be providing consistent and meaningful guidance across boundaries. So the council defines visitor use management as that dynamic process for planning for and managing the characteristics of visitor use, as well as the settings, through a variety of strategies and tools that might include things like education, site management, regulation, enforcement, allocations, and all of that is in service to sustaining the desired resource conditions and visitor experiences. So in summary, we want to be using visitor use planning to both manage people and the resources and sustain both. That's a big charge, but we're here for it. And we're developing the resources to be able to do that really well. Again, at the center of all the work that goes on with the council is the visitor use management framework. We're going to get into in a slide or two here, unpacking this wheel and the different components of it. And Maureen's going to walk us through that. But this process is really designed for us as federal managers to be able to have a common language and a common framework to collaboratively develop, implement, and monitor strategies to connect visitors to public lands and waters. So our intent here and the ultimate outcome is that we're providing those high quality experiences and sustaining resources in a way that's proactive and responsive. So it starts with really understanding the purpose and intent of the place and what we're trying to achieve, thinking through what are we managing for and why through the visitor use management direction, identifying strategies that'll help us achieve that vision, and then thinking through how we adapt and monitor over time. It's also really important for us to be thinking about the sliding scale, which is a concept that's included in the framework. This is used to ensure that the investment of time and money and other resources for planning is commensurate with the complexity of the project. We know that issues with clearly small impacts rarely require less depth and breadth of analysis than those with impacts of greater significance. So by applying the sliding scale concept, we seek to match the investment that we're making in a plan or decision-making process and the analysis that's going to inform that with the level of uncertainty and risk associated with the issues that are being addressed. So this sliding scale is used in each element of the framework as we kind of approach each phase of the process, thinking about what's the level of investment that's needed here. So regardless of the significance, complexity of the situation that we're talking about, all of the framework steps apply. This is about really wanting to make sure that we're leveling the investment of time and energy and resources with the complexity of the space that it's being applied to. So with that, I will turn it over to Maureen to walk us through some of the details and the key cornerstones of the framework.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so as she said, we're going to get into the details of each one of these 4 steps. We have build the foundation, define the visitor use management direction, identify management strategies, and implement, monitor, evaluate, and adjust. So element 1 is building the foundation, and the objective here is to really understand what needs to be done and how we need to organize the planning effort. And this step involves pulling together your planning team, identifying who the right people are to be in the room. This step also involves reviewing past plans, if you have general management plans, comprehensive plans, forest plans, foundation documents. We are going to talk a little bit more about foundation documents later in the presentation, but any previous plans or planning documents you have go into building this foundation to really ground it in your previous efforts. And then we work to identify the issue at hand and get a better understanding of current management strategies, data collection, and current conditions. Next slide, Rachel. Thanks. This element 2 is define the visitor use management direction. And what we want to do here is think about what are the conditions to be achieved or maintained, and how those conditions will be tracked over time. So this is really what we're managing for, not how we're managing for it. So these are the really establishing desired conditions. These are statements of aspiration. What do we want the visitor experience to be in the future? What do we want natural resources to look like? Cultural resources, facilities, all of these things that are integral to the visitor experience. What is our vision for these in the future? What key values need to be protected? What is most meaningful about the particular area for which we're planning? And what differentiates this area from other areas, both in terms of natural resource values and visitor experiences and opportunities. These desired conditions defining this management direction, this should be results-oriented, focused, integrated, and future-oriented. We also want this to provide long-term guidance so that we can be responsive to visitor use issues in the future. As part of this, we also define appropriate visitor activities, facilities, and services that go along with those desired conditions, and we select indicators and establish thresholds. So we have to be able to measure whether or not we're achieving those desired conditions. Our indicators are the specific resource or experiential attributes that can be measured or tracked over time so that we understand if we're achieving progress towards maintaining those desired conditions. Our thresholds are the minimally acceptable conditions associated with each one of those indicators. And this is really just about understanding where you are and whether or not you're achieving or maintaining those desired conditions. Next slide. All right, so element 3 is identifying management strategies. So this is finally when we get to the how. We often like to start our plans with the how. This really helps set a foundation so that when we get to those management strategies, we know exactly what we're managing for. So when we identify management strategies, the outcome here is that we make decisions that manage visitor use to achieve or maintain those desired conditions. How are we going to achieve those goals? So how do we get there? We think about what is the gap between where we are now and where we want to be. We also identify, so in this phase of the process, we go in and identify then those management strategies that are going to be most impactful to achieve our desired conditions. We also, in some cases, look at identifying visitor capacities. Visitor capacity is a tool to achieve our desired conditions, and we have strategies to manage to those capacities. And again, as I mentioned before, we have to understand where we are, right? So we then go in and develop a monitoring strategy, and that monitoring strategy ideally will incorporate methods that can be easily replicated, and the results can be compared over time so that we really have a good feeling of whether or not we're achieving those desired conditions. Next slide. Okay, and then step 4 is where we get to work. Here we are implementing the management strategies. We are monitoring again, so we fully understand where we are and whether or not we're achieving those. And this last part is also really important. The framework is designed to be a really iterative process. We want to evaluate the effectiveness of our management strategies towards achieving those desired conditions, and then be flexible, adjust. Just because we made a decision doesn't mean that we can't go in and adjust those management strategies. The key here is that we're achieving our desired conditions. So this is really meant to be a very iterative process. There are, next slide, a couple of tools, as Rachel hinted on earlier, to help you implement this. So we have the main visitor use management framework. And then in 2019, the council came out with the visitor capacity guidebook and the monitoring guidebook. And coming soon is the desired conditions guidebook. So just a quick summary of what's in these. The visitor capacity guidance really focuses on the legal requirements related to visitor capacity. There's also a visitor capacity position paper that was published in 2016. That's also available on the council's website. But that visitor capacity guidebook will talk about how to identify and implement capacities and where they're legally required, and also to ensure that decisions on visitor capacity are based on those desired conditions for a specific area and are directed by law and policy. The monitoring guidebook really helps managers focus on a monitoring strategy to routinely and systematically collect the data and then monitor any changes in condition over time. And that guidebook also describes how to use the data collected to assess whether changes in management are needed. So these are all available. I know Rachel dropped the link in the chat earlier. So those are all available on the Interagency Visitor Use Management website. We want to talk a little bit about how we've used this planning over time. So planning projects related to that involve visitor use management, these are intended to help parks strategically evaluate and plan for how to best enhance opportunities, connect visitors to the area's fundamental resources and values, whatever those may be. And it allows us to assess the appropriateness of new visitor activities, identify strategies to enhance access while minimizing the impacts to resources. Rachel touched on this earlier. This is not about saying no, this is about enhancing access in a way that's responsible and helps minimize those impacts to resources. We want to manage visitor demand at a popular destination, and it helps us also balance that trade-off between different visitor use management strategies. Projects that can utilize the framework really run the gamut. So we can have projects that are really specific standalone visitor use management plan. We can also have projects that implement elements of the framework. In the National Park Service, we find this in our wilderness plans, trail management plans. A wide range of planning products have implemented the framework over time. For all of these projects, the National Park Service is taking a phased approach to better evaluate the scope of the projects, the ripeness of the issues, and the feasibility of possible management strategies before embarking on a full planning and compliance effort. So we really want to fully understand what those issues are through this process. This is really helping us better determine what strategies can be implemented within the current authorities and guidance, and those that need additional evaluation and review. So you can use this framework across a wide range of planning products. And we have a couple of examples of some of our more recent efforts. I'm going to pass it to Rachel. She's going to talk about how this has been applied to the Appalachian Trail Triple Crown Plan.
Thanks. Yeah, so like Maureen said, we have a bunch of examples of different products or different planning efforts and decision-making processes that are leveraging this, both in the Park Service and as well as within our sister agencies are using this as well. We, like Maureen said, wanted to really focus on two projects that are leveraging the framework because they're being co-developed in an interagency space, similar to how things work up in the Crown. So a different crown over in the Southeast. This is the Triple Crown, not to be confused with the three long trails, but the three iconic viewpoints in Virginia. And so this is a visitor use plan looking at the Dragon's Tooth, McAfee Knob, and Tinker's Cliff, which is along a major spine just out of Roanoke, Virginia. And the photo there is McAfee Knob. Y'all might recognize it. For those who saw A Walk in the Woods, the movie about the AT, based on the book, this was on the movie poster. So it's a really popular spot, maybe one of the most popular spots along the AT. It also crosses a road here. This is one of the most dangerous road crossings along the AT as well. So a ripe spot to be thinking about visitor use management. There are 6 to 7 different landowners that all manage different components of this trail system. And it's used by thru hikers, day hikers, backpackers, weekend warriors. A whole bunch of different types of users are in this space. And like we said earlier, they don't know which part is forest and which part is park and which park is partnership by the ATC. And so when we came together as a partnership to say, hey, there's these emerging issues and all of these different stakeholders have a key part in this decision, we said, the thing that we all have in common that we can all speak to is the IDUMC framework. And so that becomes the cornerstone of our decision-making process. And everything we're doing is hung on that framework and on those steps because it's the common ground that we have to talk regardless of who the implementing agency is of the action. We can all talk to that framework. So We're going to be working on increasing visitor use levels there, impacts to natural resources and other facility concerns, and put together a comprehensive plan that all of the partners, regardless of their agency affiliation, sees themselves in as being a part of the development and also sees themselves in the implementation of it. And one of the fun things is that it's actually open for public comment right now. It started last week and through the end of the month, we're open for public comment. So you can learn more about this plan and its partnership by going to the website there, parkplanning.nps.gov/app-of-the-UN. Maureen, you want to talk a little bit about the PCT?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
can I just jump in? Can you wrap up in the next just minute or so?
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yep. I'll go super fast. So the AT Triple Crown Plan is applying the visitor use management framework across the entire plan. The Pacific Crest Foundation document really focused on step one of the plan. That was the element that kind of brought everyone together, which is those foundational elements. So they identified a range of issues and opportunities from visitor use experience to trail condition. And that common thread occurred at the step one, which was the need to develop a shared language across what was fundamental in the trail. So before embarking on any site, area, or trail-wide plan, the PCT needed that shared language about fundamental resources and values, significant, and the nature and purposes of the trail. These elements will help the trail as it considers implementation level planning and really understanding across the trail what they're managing for, what is most fundamental. This was an interagency collaboration between the National Park Service, the Forest Service, the BLM, California State Parks, and tribal lands to identify what is most fundamental across the entirety of the Pacific Crest Trail. This was the first foundation document for the Forest Service, and in many ways was built on the collaborative spirit developed through the work of the Interagency Visitor Use Management Council and that first step of the framework.